Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sapna Dedwal. I'm working as a professor in the Department of Management. This is my lecture 17 of Business Law of Unit 3, and this subject is taught in BBA 4th semester of MDU curriculum. The topic I'm going to cover in this lecture are effect of destruction of goods, main documents of the title of goods, price, the definition of the word price, then definitions of the word condition and warranty, then when conditions may be treated as a warranty, express and implied conditions and warranties. It means express and implied conditions and express and implied warranties. So I'm starting with first topic, that is effect of destruction of goods. If the goods are damaged or lost after their property was passed on to the buyer, the contract will remain unaffected and the buyer will bear the loss. But where the goods are yet to become buyer's goods, any damage or loss will have an effect on the contract of sale of goods. So the following are the points which would explain the effect of destruction of goods on the contract. The first one is destruction of goods before making the contract. So as per section 7 of the Sale of Goods Act, this would be an agreement discovered to be a void. The contract is void if the goods without the knowledge of the seller have at the time when the contract was made become damaged or destroyed, so the contract becomes void. For example, A contracted to sell to R a certain quantity of goods which contained an assortment of goods of different qualities, sizes and makes. R was to pay to K an amount of 40,000 rupees for the total quantity. Without any fault of K, 10% of the goods were destroyed in fire. So since the contract was by its nature for entire lot, so thus this contract becomes void. The whole contract becomes the void. Now the second point is destruction of goods before the contract of sale but after the agreement to sell. So as per section 8 of the Sale of Goods Act, this situation amounts to possibility of the performance, as seller is not in a position to perform the contract. So contract becomes void. Now the third situation is destruction of future goods. If the future goods are specific, the destruction of such goods will amount to give rise to a supervening impossibility and the contract will become void. For example, A agreed to sell to B 200 tons of potatoes to be grown in his land. The crop was almost totally damaged because of a disease. So the contract was said to have become void because it was the case a destruction of specific future goods identified as the crop from a particular land. So in all the above cases, we have seen what will have impact on the contract if goods get destroyed. Now the next topic is document of title of goods. The document of title of good is one which entitles and enables its rightful holder to deal with goods represented by it as if he were the owner. It is used in ordinary course of business as a proof of ownership, possession or control of goods. It authorizes the possessor to receive the goods. It also confers a right on the possessor to transfer the goods to another person by mere delivery or by proper endorsement of the delivery. So it is very clear to the document of the title of the goods entitle or enables the person to enter into a contract of sale. So these main documents are bill of lading. A bill of lading is a receipt given by the ship owner acknowledging the receipt of goods for a carriage. Now the second one is dock warrant. A dock warrant is a document which is issued by a dock owner. It is issued at the request of the merchant who contains the details regarding weight, measurement of specific goods, and a declaration or certificate by the owner of dock that the goods are held on behalf of person whose name appear in that document. Then third one is warehouse keeper's certificate. Warehouse is a building in which goods are stored. So warehouse keeper's certificate is a document which is issued by the warehouse keeper. It is certified by a warehouse keeper that the goods specified in the document are in the warehouse. Now the next one is wharfinger certificate. Wharfinger is a person who is the owner or keeper of a wharf for the purpose of receiving goods in order to ship them. So he carries on this transaction in consideration of payment for hire. So wharfinger certificate is like warehouse keeper certificate, a document issued by wharfinger. This certifies that the goods specified in that particular document are in the wharf. So in order to be a document of title, it must be in the nature of warrant. Then next one is railway receipt. Railway receipt is a document issued by the railway as acknowledgement of the receipt of the goods. So these are the main documents, definitions of main documents which are related to Sale of Goods Act. Now the next topic is the definition of word price. Price is a very important word in Sale of Goods Act. So section 9 to 11 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 provides several provisions regarding to price and time to be followed during a contract of sale of goods. So according to section 210 of Sale of Goods Act 1930, the price is a contract of sale, means the money consideration for a sale of goods. So money means legal tender or money circulation. Old and rare coins are not come under this scope of definition of price. So old and rare coins are not called as price because under this definition. Now the next topic is definition of condition. So according to section 12(2) of the Sale of Goods Act 1930, a condition is a stipulation essential to the main purpose of the contract and the breach of which gives the aggrieved party a right to treat the contract as repudiated. Repudiated means cancelled. So condition is an essential requirement on which the whole contract depends, and if that requirement of contract is breached, then the aggrieved party has the absolute right to reject the contract. For example, Ram consults Shyam, a motor car dealer, for a car suitable for touring purposes to promote the sale of his product. Shyam suggests Maruti car, and the Shyam accordingly buys it from Shyam suggested Maruti car, and the Ram accordingly buys it from Shyam. So the car turns out to be unfit for the touring purposes. So here this contract is void, as it was in the beginning. It was told by Ram to Shyam that for what purpose he is buying a car. Now, definition of warranty. According to section 12(3) of the Sale of Goods Act, a warranty is a stipulation collateral to the main purpose of the contract the breach of which gave rise to claim for damages but not to right to reject the goods, and treat the contract as repudiated. So it's very clear. In case of condition, the aggrieved party can reject the contract, but in warranty they can claim damages but cannot reject the contract. So difference between, now the next one is difference between conditions and warranties. So a condition is a stipulation essential to the main purpose of the contract, whereas a warranty is a stipulation collateral to the main purpose of the contract. In case of condition, the aggrieved party can reject the contract, but in case of warranty, it can sue for the damages but cannot avoid the contract. So condition is essential to the main purpose of the contract, whereas warranty is only collateral to main purpose. And now the next topic is when a condition may be treated as a warranty. So as per section 13 of the Sales of Goods Act 1930, in the following cases, a contract is not avoided even on account of breach of a condition. So these are voluntary waiver of condition. So where a contract of sale is subject to any condition to be fulfilled by the seller, the buyer may waive the condition or elect to treat the breach of condition as breach of warranty. So if buyer decides to waive condition, he cannot afterward insist on its fulfillment. So if buyer has waived or elect to choose to waive the condition or breach of condition, then later on he cannot ask to fulfill the condition of the contract. Now second is acceptance of goods by a buyer. So where a contract of sale is not severable and the buyer has accepted the goods or part thereof, the breach of any condition to be fulfilled by the seller can only be treated as breach of warranty, because he has already accepted a part of that contract. So it means when he has accepted a part of contract, it means he doesn't have any problem to the fulfillment of that particular condition. So later on, the buyer cannot insist on fulfilling the conditions of the contract. Now the third one is conversion of condition into warranty. If the buyer has chose to treat the conditions as warranty, then he can only demand damages, cannot reject the contract later on. Now the next topic is next is implied conditions. According to the Sale of Goods Act 1930, the implied conditions on part of the buyer and seller are: the first one is condition as to title. First, I would like to tell you implied condition is implied means conditions which need not to be expressed. These conditions are important. This is our understood conditions which seller even not convey to the buyer. Even then he has to fulfill these conditions of the contract. So according to Sale of Goods Act 1930, these are the conditions. The following are the conditions which are called as implied conditions. First one is condition as to title. This is an implied condition. Buyer doesn't have to ask from seller whether goods belong to him, whether he is the rightful owner of the goods or not. So it is an implied condition. This implied condition emphasizes that when a person seeks to sell goods, there is a unspoken assurance from him that he is entitled to sell them and pass property to buyer. The second one is sale by description. So in sale by description, there is an implied condition that goods shall correspond with the description. If sale is by sample, then goods shall correspond to sample also. If it is say by sample, then all the goods should be as the sample was. shown to the seller, shown to the buyer. Then third condition is condition as to fitness or quality. So there is an implied condition on the part of the seller that the goods supplied shall reasonably fit for the purpose for which the buyer wants them. But the purpose must be made known to the seller at the time of contract of sale. So if the buyer hasn't expressly told the seller about his purpose, then this will not be called as implied uh, condition. So seller has to tell, has to inform the buyer has to inform the seller that why he is purchasing these goods, what is the purpose behind the purchase of the goods. Now the fourth one is condition as to merchantability. This condition is implied only where the sale is by description. So it is understood, it is implied condition that sale whosoever seller is selling goods and he can sell it, and he has the right to sell these goods. Then fifth one is condition as to wholesomeness. In the case of eatables and provisions, there is implied condition that goods shall wholesome. The wholesome means that goods shall fit for human consumption. So it is implied condition that goods should be fit for the human consumption. In that case, buyer doesn't have to ask the seller that whether these goods are good for using or not. It is implied condition that seller only will sell those goods which are fit for human consumption. Now the next topic is implied warranties. So section 14B or 14C of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 lays down implied warranties for the contract of sale of goods, and these implied warranties are, implied means which you don't have to express it, you don't have to speak out, it is understood, it is treated as that seller has to follow these conditions or these warranties. The first one is warranties as to undisturbed possession. So there is an implied warranty that buyer shall have and enjoy a quiet possession of the goods. So according to this warranty, that it is related to the seller, that seller will sell only those goods which he can sell or which he is entitled to sell. Only then buyer can enjoy quiet possession of the goods, undisturbed possession of the goods. Then second one is warranty as to non-existence of encumbrances. So there is an implied warranty that the goods shall free from any charge in favor of any third party. For example, Ram takes loan from Shyam and hypothecated his scooter with Shyam as a security. So later on, Ram sold this scooter to Arun, who bought goods in good faith. So here Arun can claim damages from Ram because his position is disturbed by Shyam having a charge. Then third implied warranty is disclosure of dangerous nature of goods. There is an implied warranty on the part of the seller that seller must warn the buyer of goods if they are of dangerous nature. For example, Ram purchases a tin of disinfected powder from Shyam. Shyam knows that the lid of the tin is defective, and if it is opened without special care, it may be dangerous, but tells nothing to Ram. So when Ram opens the tin in a normal way, whereupon the disinfected powder flips into his eyes and causes injuries to him. So in this case, Shyam is liable for the damages to Ram. Now these are the questions which are related to the above topics. If any query is there, you can always contact me. Thank you so much.